Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hello and welcome to the October 23rd edition of Basis Loaded with Joe Schmit. I am Joe Schmit. This episode, as always, is produced by Paige Driscoll. And what we do here is we break down the latest from the NDPSR report. And we'll start this week with butter. This butter number came in at $264.39. $264.39 is down 10 on a week that the CME weekly average only moved 8 cents. So that moves us to a -2 basis relative to the CME 1 week average of 266.10. And the reason that we have that negative basis, of course, is the massive volume that we saw at the CME last week. 161 loads, which equates to roughly 6.4 million pounds at 264. So just a record amount of weight changing hands at the CME at a discount, and that was enough to pull this NDPSR value down. You'll notice a lot of that weight and then some showed up here on the NDPSR, with the NDPSR weekly volume totaling north of 6.8 million pounds. So just a massive amount of product changing hands as the butter market moves from the 320 level to the mid 260s. We see a big change of ownership, and the fact that the manufacturer was able to get clear at relatively flat basis certainly seems like a victory. Up next is cheese, and we'll start with the blocks. This block number coming in at 212.77. That is a little bit higher than expected on price. That's a +9 to the CME 1 week average of 203.65. So the CME was down 13 cents. And the NDPSR was only able to move 9. So we had a gain in basis moving to +9. And all that with 16 loads trading at the CME last week at an average price of 162. Pretty decent basis, as the NDPSR having a hard time moving with the losses that we're seeing at the CME. Possibly some export business was done at a higher level when we were up at the 220-ish area in the block, and that's just shipping now. That could possibly be the reason that we're seeing this higher than normal basis. Of course, with the NDPSR volume close to 12 million pounds, that's about expected volume. So all in all, +9 basis on expected volume. You have to call that a big win for the block manufacturer this week. And of course, our other variety of cheese is the 500-pound barrel. That price came in at $215.99. It's on sale, $215.99. And that represents a +16 to the CME 2 week average of 199.65. We traded 8 loads at the CME last week, so that could have done a little bit to add to our volume totals. It's interesting that 2 week average was down 28 to get to that 199.65. So just a massive move in the 2 week barrel average. And typically on an outsized move like that, that's a move that we only see during kind of COVID, and of course when the market makes new all-time highs and then immediately retraces 70 cents. That's when you would see a 28-cent move on the 2 week average. And on that 28-cent move, the NDPSR was able to keep close. NAS prices coming down 20 cents, but we started with an elevated basis, and then when you lose an additional 8 cents, then of course we're up to this +16 basis. So the sales last week didn't really keep pace with the 2 week average that we're seeing at the CME. And at that elevated level, we just had a bunch of weight change hands here on the NAS. 13.35 million pounds. So pretty good volume. Again, almost our expected volume for the barrel at a +16-cent basis. Certainly an impressive number there, and impressive basis for both blocks and barrels. In the way this week, 56.11. That represents a -4 to the CME 1 week average of 60.30. Now that 60.30 weekly average is the high week at the CME before moving back below that 60-cent level. We traded 21 loads at the CME, and that might have pulled basis down a little bit. But then, of course, in the way, we're always talking about prior week's NDPSR, that October 5th number of 54.60. So the manufacturer was still able to call a $0.015 premium over prior week's NDPSR, and at that level was able to move north of 5.7 million pounds, almost 5.8. So good volume at a $0.015 premium, you'll notice that those premiums versus prior week's average are contracting a little bit as we move along. But of course, in the way, lately we've been moving up in 2-week increments. Now, of course, sales that are occurring this week, we're looking at this 56.61, which of course was a 2-cent jump from that October 5th number. So this might be the last week that we have dry way on the NDPSR report in the 56 neighborhood, because I would expect anywhere from a penny to a penny and a half increase on next week's report. And then lastly, non-fat, 134.87. That represents a minus, let's call it a minus half a cent to the CME 1-week average of 135.45. We traded 24 loads on the CME, which is pretty good volume. That volume, however, didn't show up here on the NDPSR. Just a little bit over 14 million and a good deal short of our expected 20 million pound threshold for the non-fat dry milk. So this is week 3 of 4 for the October pricing cycle. Currently getting October class 3 at 22.75 and October class 4 all the way down at 20.93. If you carry current CME equivalents out through the 5-week November pricing cycle, getting a November class 3 of 20.40 and a November class 4 of 20.70. So projected October class 3, 22.75, projected November class 3 based on current CME equivalents is 20.40. So you're talking about essentially a $2.35 move month to month in class. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it doesn't happen often. We'll see what they have in store for us in the weeks to come at the CME. Until then, on behalf of Paige and the entire EverAg Insights group, I'm Joe. I'll see you next week. Bye.